I want to tell you the story of how I met your father.
Oh, good God, here we go.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. And this is the story of how I watched How I Met Your Father. Going into the show, I think I was a lot more optimistic than a whole lot of other people were. I mean, you kind of had people coming at it from all different angles. There were talks about how it would never live up to How I Met Your Mother, and then there were other people talking about how it would live up to How I Met Your Mother because How I Met Your Mother sucks. Their words, not mine. I don't co-sign that opinion. It essentially felt like you were going into a lose-lose scenario. So did How I Met Your Father find a way to win?
We'll find out today!
I'm both shocked at what this show took from its predecessor, and also what it changed from it. First and foremost, I wasn't expecting to ever hear that opening theme again. So hearing a softer kind of cover of it, that was kind of pleasant. Sophie being a hopeless romantic who's out there searching for the one seems a little bit familiar, but Hilary Duff kind of makes it her own. And in this show, it comes off more cute than it does creepy. Though to be fair, they've only had 2 episodes thus far, so the creep factor can be increased over time.
We'll see what happens.
Regardless, I think we can all agree that the lengths that both Sophie and Ted would go for love is absolutely insane. Also, it feels like both of them have, their finger on the love trigger. They're ready to blurt that word out to anybody who gives them a passing glance. The show has the same basic setup and title of its predecessor. A parent telling their child about how they met their significant other, the other parent. There's definitely similarities there. And these similarities tell me that this is very much made in the same vein of what came before it. However, the differences are also enough to set it apart and not make it seem like a total clone of what came before. As opposed to keeping the narrator unseen to the viewing audience, this time around, the narrator is front and center. Unlike Bob Saget, God rest his soul, Kim Cattrall is physically involved with the show, showing up to both open up and close out episodes. This time around, it's the child of the lead that isn't seen. I do appreciate that the laugh track doesn't go as hard as it did in How I Met Your Mother, and it feels even more fitting because this show is nowhere near as funny. If I'm being entirely unbiased and honest here, these episodes just didn't do it for me. They didn't hook me. First off, episodes 1 and 2 didn't do the greatest job of establishing the show's leads, as even after watching both episodes twice, I still had to look up the characters' names. Outside of that, this is usually the part of the video where I talk about the cast and the roles that they play in the show, but as of right now, that's incredibly hard to do. Because despite having over 40 minutes to do so, they've told me nothing about these characters. Here's everything I know, not just about the characters, but about the entire series. Ready? Sophie is in love with being in love. This brunette dude is cynical because of a failed proposal. His best friend has a successful proposal. So now he's married friend. We know nothing else about him. And somehow we know even less about his wife. Brunette dude's adopted sister is awkward around people. Sophie's roommate is impulsive and immature. I think that's what they're going for. I don't know. Sophie's roommate is dating a British dude who is notably British. Now those were a whole lot of characters. And despite the show having a whole lot to work with, they're giving me nothing to work with for this video. And as bad as they were at establishing characters, somehow the show does an even worse job of creating believable character dynamics. Everything about this sudden group of people meeting and then becoming friends feels entirely forced. It'd be one thing if they started off the show with them already being a group of friends and then going from there, as the show that came before it did, but these people just meeting and then randomly deciding they're the best of buds comes off as so unimaginably unnatural. Sophie takes an Uber, chats up the Uber driver and his passenger. She comes home to find her roommate slash best friend with her roommate slash best friend's new boyfriend whom she's never met, some British dude, who's also now apparently going to be living with them as well. She then realizes she switched phones with the Uber driver's friend, meets them at a bar, and then meets the Uber driver's adopted sister. And that's how this random group of friends, I guess, is formed. Even in saying what I said, the way that I said it is unbearably awkward as it was, makes more sense than it does in the show itself. Honestly, this just felt like a bunch of people meeting each other And that's it. And look, that's a weird enough way of introducing everybody. Like, that's strange enough on its own. But then these characters don't really form bonds. They just become friends. Like there's no reason for them to be friends other than the convenience of the plot. Like, it's just that it's written that way. Do you know how many people in my life I've had similar encounters with that I do not have a relationship with? It's almost like the way this universe works. If you meet somebody, that's it. You guys are lifelong friends. You're basically blood brothers at that point. Without having any real idea who they are, they're just like, yeah, these are my best friends. This is the first time they're all meeting, and it feels beyond contrived the way that they do so. But on top of that, they just spontaneously decide that they're friends now. And an episode later, they're all hanging out as if they've always known each other. I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. It's way too much, way too soon, done way too shitty. And the fact that this feels so fictitious kind of makes the whole show seem soulless. These aren't normal human interactions. And if I can't buy the friendships on the show, and I can't buy the dialogue on the show, I can't really feel for these people as if they were real people. Nor can I have any kind of investment in what feels like a completely synthetic product. Also, it takes place in 2022, and there is not a mask in sight. So did the pandemic just never happen in this universe? This is like watching Friends in September of 2001. That's not to say that the show is all bad. I do like a lot of the performances on it, and I think that Hilary Duff and Kim Cattrall are probably the strongest. But even in me giving the show that praise, Hilary Duff and Kim Cattrall never come across as the same character whatsoever. Which I guess is also in place with How I Met Your Mother, as Danny Tanner wasn't actually Ted Mosby. The difference is one was a voice, and a lot of people theorize that that's how Ted hears himself. And here, Kim Cattrall is a whole-ass presence. The two don't really seem to look, sound, or even act the same. I don't know, it's just a hard sell. It doesn't completely ruin the show for me, but this is a pet peeve I have with many a project. I just can't buy this as being the past and this as being the future. That's not to say anything negative on either of the two. They're too different to be the same. As of right now, the show isn't doing it for me. But I will give it the credit to say that it does have some endearing moments. The Brooklyn Bridge walk, even though terribly shot on a green screen, was sorta cute. Earlier in the first episode, Sophie is telling Jesse, the Uber guy, about how she romanticizes romance. And he assumes that she only thinks this way because she's the product of the ever-so-rare loving marriage, only for him to find out at the end of the episode that that's not the case. The reveal that Jesse and Sid are the new occupants of Marshall, Lily, and Ted's old place was an absolutely unnecessary inclusion, but it was a nice one. It's not hammering home its continuity, it's just telling all of us that this is in fact canon to those events. It doesn't need to be, but, it's harmless enough that it is. It's a touching tribute. Also a touching tribute was the way that they ended the show in remembrance of Bob Saget. It was short, but it was sweet. I also kind of dig the way the show goes against How I Met Your Mother's process. How I Met Your Mother introduced the mother at the ass end of the show, whereas here, they introduced the father in the very first episode. We just don't know which guy it is, but he's here. I think that's kind of an interesting way of going about things, because now it's going to keep people guessing. Like, Jesse and Sophie share some really cute moments, but I kind of feel like that's too obvious. I think the show's gonna goad us into thinking that he's the dad, and then they're gonna pull the rug right out from underneath us. I'm not trying to say that the show is an immediate failure, or that I'm throwing in the towel and quitting on it. I will be keeping up with the show in the hopes that it gets better with time. I don't think that it was horrific, it just wasn't the greatest first impression. And being somebody who, quite frankly, sucks at first impressions, and second ones, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth ones as well, I'm gonna give it another shot. Continually. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below whether you thought How I Met Your Father was a successful sibling to How I Met Your Mother, or if you would have preferred that it was aborted. Anyway, with all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I think you're gonna like me.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. And I've talked pretty recently about this show before, and the video I made before was pretty thorough and transparent. The video was titled, How I Met Your Father Sucks. where I appropriately talked about the show How I Met Your Father and why it sucked. See what I mean? Transparency. And now that I've gotten past the first 2 episodes and watched the next 3 that were uploaded to Hulu, I'm gonna be real with y'all, it's actually starting to grow on me.
Move this man!
Now listen, I don't think the show has quite found its own identity just yet, but these 3 episodes showed me that they're not just making steps, but they're making giant leaps in the right direction. And I found these latest entries into the series to be far more competent than the previous ones. I'm not going back on what I said. The first impression of the show sucked. But then I think back to all the times that I've made a bad first impression, and some of those people that I've made that impression on are still my friends today.
I really don't like you.
Yeah, I got that vibe.
First impressions are hard, and they're even tougher in forms of entertainment. Perfect example, I love the American remake of The Office, and I love Parks and Rec. But I skip the first season of both of those shows almost every time I run through the series. The shows hadn't yet figured out what they were. I think when it comes to TV series, you'll find the phrase first is the worst come up a lot. Not always, but much more than you think. And I think the reason for this is that this is their experimental dip your toe season. They're trying to figure out if the water's warm enough to jump in and where the sweet spot would be for them to dive in. And that's smart to do because usually your initial vision doesn't end up being the final product. If you don't believe me, Google what Friends was originally supposed to be. Or take a look at the show Good Morning Miss Bliss, a terribly mediocre show that would be retooled into Saved by the Bell. So with all this praise I'm about to shower on the series that I once buried, let me first go over what I still find valid. This group of people assorting the way they did? Absolute insanity. Forced doesn't even begin to explain it. Their giant meat cute? Wasn't so cute to me. I just don't like how these Avengers assembled. However, there is a better group dynamic that's starting to form here. I don't really think that they gelled at first, but there is some chemistry between these actors, and I understand now how each and every one of them got their roles. They do work well together. Just the way that they were put together doesn't work well in reality. I'm actually really starting to enjoy their goofy interactions. And I could see that these characters are starting to grow outside of their stereotypical blueprints. They were ideas for characters, now they're becoming characters. Valentina and Charlie's relationship is ridiculous in nature, but I think we all know a couple like this. You know, the ones that are together one week, and then they're not together the next week, but then they're together the following week. Rinse, wash, repeat for the next 3 to 5 years, and you have a bunch of people I grew up with. Come on, don't act like you don't know people like this. The couples who have been together for years but still have "it's complicated" as their relationship status on Facebook. The couples who have an open relationship but are just a little bit jealous and resentful that they're not the center of their partner's universe. Hey, I ain't judging. I'm just saying they do exist. This pairing, despite being disaster-rific in nature, aren't shown to be abusive or entirely toxic. They're very chaotic neutral to me, and I think that makes it fun to watch. Valentina's immaturity and fear of getting old and boring spices up their relationship, but in a way it also kind of puts a strain on it. Because Charlie, though enjoying the many benefits of dating somebody like that, also wants something a little bit more conventional. What I find really interesting about this relationship is that what makes things fun and new might get old real fast. I mean, yes, I get that they had that one moment in the bathroom, but who knows how long that'll actually last. Valentina is beyond impulsive, so she herself probably can't even properly predict how she feels from one minute to the next. Who knows what the future holds? Ellen and Jesse have a really interesting connection, or lack thereof. The two are siblings by adoption, but they live 2 entirely different lives, being split up when they were very young after their parents divorced. Because of this, they find that they know next to nothing about each other, but they love each other nonetheless, because they're family. It's all about family. So watching them reunite and reconnect is kinda cute, and I hope we see more of this arc in the future. Seeing these two interact endears audiences to both characters, while also rebuilding a familial bond between them. I think this relationship, as well as Jesse and Sophie's bonding, are the most interesting parts of the Jesse character. I feel like what the character lacks on his own, he makes up for as a +1 to other characters. Watching Hilary Duff and Josh Peck go out on a date together as full-grown adults, slowly approaching their 40s, is pretty surreal to me. I grew up watching Josh as a kid on shows like The Amanda Show and Drake and Josh. And while I didn't watch Lizzie McGuire, I was, aware of it. I knew it was a thing, but I did like Cheaper by the Dozen and Casper Meets Wendy if it's any consolation here. My point is, I grew up with them. So seeing them together grown up just reminds me that they're old, and now so am I. No, I'm fine. Ellen is quickly becoming my favorite character of the bunch. As a matter of fact, she sort of reminds me of a character I created when I was making my own series. It sucked, by the way. In case you're wondering, it sucked. We'll get into that in a different video. That character was also a lesbian, had a fondness for similar hats, and was also ridiculously awkward to a comedic degree. I only bring this up to say that this is a good representation of a person that does exist in the world. Because when I was making that character, I was basing it off of one of my friends, who was that character to a T. Ellen overall is well performed by her actress. But side note, you guys really named your one lesbian character Ellen? That's like if I was making a show, and I named the one middle-aged white woman who gets in a fight with managers everywhere Karen. And she has a son who's a brolic ladies man named Chad. And he's got a hot girlfriend named Stacy. He also has a best friend who follows him around place to place and is nearly obsessed with him. His name is Stan. Anyway, my point is, Ellen is probably my favorite character. My least favorite character? The British dude. Because his whole shtick is just, I'm British. I don't know, I just think that's kind of lame. I mean, he's gotten better like everything else about the show as the episodes go on. But still, can we just give him any other notable trait other than not being from here? I'm not trying to win any PC brownie points. I'm just saying it's a really tired joke, and I'm really tired of hearing it. He's not good. His kind of sort of almost actual girlfriend is a shoo-in for my second favorite character. Though I think the series has greatly tuned her down since the first 2 episodes. I'm not entirely sure as of right now if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's definitely a thing. I mean, the character does still seem like the character from the previous episodes. It's just now she's a little bit more subdued and a little bit less loud. But yeah, Valentina is a close second. Again, this might be a personal or biased thing, because like with Ellen, I know people just like this character. She's highly entertaining, and I think that she's kind of being positioned to be the Barney of the group, just minus the excessive sleaziness. Well, minus the excessive part. Sid and Jesse, I think, are a little bit underdeveloped. Like, the roles are well acted, and they do come off as likable, but outside of minor character traits, we still don't really know all that much about them. Sid is honest and loyal, and he's made his relationship the center of his life, while Jesse is nice, but prone to outbursts, and also has trouble dating. I like these characters, but they're not yet distinct in their own, at least not at this point in time. They're blank canvases that I really hope we see painted in the next couple episodes. Sorry if my metaphors sound pretentious, I'm just trying to get my point across. Out of the group, Hilary Duff Sophie is probably the most likable. And yeah, sure, you could say that she's just female Ted Mosby by design, but the character always comes off as sincere, and in a lot of ways, I think she may be a better leading protagonist than Ted. Though to be fair, time could very easily change that. They could very easily accidentally dip into creepy territory. There's a fine line, and it is very easy to accidentally cross it. But so far, so good. She comes off as a hopeful, hopeless romantic. And you kind of want to root for her and see her get her happily ever after. Not sexually, just so we're clear. Now, don't get me wrong. Despite all these wonderful things I've said, the show does still have its faults. There are some things on the show that just don't really add up. At least not to me. Sophie turns Jesse down not for a lack of interest, but because she's not ready to date at that moment. And then a mere 2 episodes later, she's ready to give this whole dating thing a try again with his boss. Shoehorning Josh Peck into the plot, and then retconning that Sophie actually did meet his character in the first episode, all in an effort so you can add another potential father into the mix, just seems so, well, shoehorned. I guess I already said that. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm happy he's here. But this is yet another case of the show giving a shitty introduction. It's like I hate how these characters get to where they're at, but I'm enjoying when they're at where they're at. And the only other thing that really bugs me is that, outside of the main cast, people on the show don't act believable in the slightest. Like, they don't speak or react like any real human being would. It's like all the effort in the dialogue went solely to the people who show up in the intro. and everyone else is left to verbally fend for themselves. I think the tone of this series matches the originals, but it manages to do something original with it. So in a lot of ways, this feels like a much more modernized take on that series, without trying to overshadow it or reboot it. This show is really starting to feel like a spiritual successor to that show. I know I emphasized before that the show sucked, and it did. Those first 2 episodes were not barn burners. But I'll tell you what, these following episodes, I think they'll put some butts in seats. I was able to watch and then rewatch these episodes, and I didn't roll my eyes or sigh comedically loud once. Which is saying something, because I am sarcastic by nature. I don't need an audience. It's just natural for me. I actually really enjoyed myself. I think now the show has leaned in more to the DNA of its namesake. If they keep this up, I truly believe that they could very well have successfully made the How I Met Your Mother of this generation. So let's all hope that they've learned from their parents' mistakes, and they don't make the same ones. I mean, could you imagine if the follow-up show also had a horrifically awful ending? Like, they screwed it up twice, the ending of the series? I mean, that's crazy, though. How could that possibly... Oh, yeah. Anyway, with all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
It's the perfect time. And as Robin Scherbatsky taught me, timing is everything.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. And I've talked about how much I Met Your Father sucks. And then shortly thereafter, I talked about how it was actually pretty good.
The reason I'm telling you all this is because I'm playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
To say I've had mixed feelings on this brand is an understatement. I think it got off to a relatively boring and meandering start. But then I found the follow-up episodes to be surprisingly great improvements from the bad first impression I got. So today, I'm here to look back at the last 5 episodes of the show's first season to see if it broke even. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. I find a bunch of the plots in the show actually kind of fun. They touch on topics I don't think the original show did in its run, but they're also directions I feel that they would have taken had that show still been around today. Having Jesse unknowingly start a relationship with a girl that his adopted sister had a one-night fling with seems right up the alley of where the first show would go had it gotten a season 17. I like this cast of characters. I think that there's a lot of them, and as such, there isn't always a lot of time for them from episode to episode. But the show does a mostly good job at juggling plots to give them all screen time. These plots usually fit a similar theme and play into one overall narrative, sometimes connecting in ways that I would not have previously foreseen. It's just, sometimes some of the main characters feel a lot more like supporting cast or reoccurring roles. But this changes from episode to episode. Sometimes Ellen and Sid are in the back, while Valentina and Charlie are in the forefront. Sometimes Jesse's the main focus, while the rest of the cast is put on the back burner. This is drastically different from How I Met Your Mother's 5 leads, because those characters were always at the center of every episode, which is fine, by the way. I'm not complaining. As a matter of fact, I think this is a good way of making sure none of the leads ever get stale. We're limited with how much we see of each person from every given moment. I think there's merit to the statement that too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And I also think that there's merit to the statement that absence makes the heart grow fonder. So this isn't something bad, it's just something different. And something worth noting. Hilary Duff has really made her character incredibly likable and real. I was worried going in that we were just going to see a grown-up Lizzie McGuire, but even in her squeaky clean performance here, she's completely believable, and I find myself actually rooting for her character, which is not something I thought I could say when this show first started. I think I've praised her work in the show before, but she really deserves all the credit in the world, because I believe that this is the type of character that's easier to get wrong than it is to get right. I actually think thus far she's been a surprisingly better lead than Ted Mosby. Even when the character is at her absolute worst, it's understandable as to how she got there, and it doesn't change the overall perception of the character. Maybe that's just because she's not pressuring others into dating her, like someone else I know. But the point is, it's easy to make a lovesick, romance-obsessed young adult come off as considerably creepy, but she doesn't. And I think that's both in part due to the writing, and in part due to Hilary Duff. So, props to both. Ellen is still the highlight of the show for me. She's by far my favorite character. I think both because there's something so authentic in this performance, but also because I've had friends that remind me a lot of this character. So it could be my own personal thing. Despite being a total fish out of water, she still fits in with this new school of land fish perfectly. I'm sorry, my metaphors sound a lot better in my head than when they come out of my mouth. Her comedic timing is on point, and it never feels like it's effortful on her part. I don't feel like I'm watching someone play a part, I feel like I'm watching someone in their day-to-day life. I think that she's often overlooked because she hasn't had too many episodes where she was the primary focus, but I'm really hoping that'll change in season 2. Tien Tran is actually a hell of an actress, and yes, I did actually have to look to this video in order to realize how to pronounce her name.
My name is Tien, but my full name is actually Han Tien.
Mainly because I have white guy tongue and I cannot pronounce any name just by reading it. Like, I am an uncultured swine. Anyway, Tien Tran is a hell of an actress because she can switch from making you laugh at her genuine goofiness to making you feel her in moments where the plot is taking itself a little more seriously. All the credit in the world to her and to the writers. I just hope that we see more of her in a more prominent role. I'm not saying make her the star of the show, but make her the star of her own episode here and there. I'm gonna be honest with you, she may just be my favorite character not only in this show, but like the whole franchise, parent show included. I find the character of Valentina to be very tiring and downright annoying. I think that that's intended, like that's by design, not coincidence. You know, this wasn't a mistake, but it doesn't make me like the character anymore. She's oblivious and obnoxious and self-centered. She has no real understanding of the world outside of herself. Whereas her boyfriend Charlie, I also find to be a really outdated and unappealing stupid stereotype. He's posh and British, and I really thought by 2022 we would have gotten past this. But yeah, he's basically what Americans joke that British people are like. If this show was made in the UK and he was an American, he'd look like me, have a Big Mac in his hand, and at all times talk about freedom. It's a pretty tired trope. Let's just move on, please. Not just as a show, but like as a society. Let's move on from this. I don't really like either of these characters, but I will admit that when you put them together as an item, they really seem to get the best out of each other. Both characters' most redeeming moments are shared moments between the two. I think I like the actors that play the parts, but not the parts themselves. Because Valentina, when she's not acting snobbish and stuck up, comes across as really genuine and at times really funny. And Charlie's actor, you can tell, is putting so much effort into his performance, and I think he almost breaks through what he's pigeonholed with. I like this dysfunctional duo together, but apart, not so much. When they're in separate plots, it usually doesn't work for me. Not really a fan. However, it does feel like they're consistently treading the same water every episode. He doesn't like the way that she undermines him. He does it back, and now she doesn't like the way he undermines her. They learn their lesson, but then the slate is wiped clean for the very next episode. Rinse, wash, repeat. I'm already kinda over it at this point. You know, like, let's at least find something else for them to clash and then smash over. I still have a hard time describing Jesse and Sid, but I do feel like they're developing more and more over time. It's just kind of at a snail's pace at this point. I like that we're learning more about the characters, but like, you know, we've just gone through a full season now. We should know a little bit more than we do about them. I should be able to accurately describe them to an audience, but I kinda can't. Sid's backstory behind why he bought the bar was short but sweet. It really shows how thoughtful and sentimental of a person he is. But then you could say the same exact thing about Jesse, who goes above and beyond for his friends. Most notably, Sophie. The friendship between the group of people does feel legitimate. I totally buy them as a group of pals. Even if I don't necessarily buy how they became the best of buds, the friendship itself is believable. I feel like I've been using this word a lot on this channel, so after this I'll try to stop, but I find the romance between Josh Peck's Drew and Hilary Duff's Sophie, won't happen again. I find it really endearing. I buy the two as a loving, awkward couple. It's like they have two halves of the same strange working brain. But I did find the conflict they found themselves in to be both premature and forced. It would have been nice to see more of these two work together and be in a relationship. It feels like this was cast aside last minute out of fear of not getting a second season. And then they hastily threw Jesse and Sophie together because it was kind of mentioned once or twice before. Which, by the way, the build-up to that also feels a little bit forced. I just wish the show would stop fast-forwarding through itself so I could kind of enjoy the ride a little bit more. Look, this is just one guy's opinion, but Slow builds make things mean more in the long run. This is probably my primary issue with the show. It doesn't give itself room to breathe. It's constantly propelling itself forward that it doesn't give its own plots time to just exist. It moves from one thing to the next. I feel like these story arcs have solid beginnings and endings, but they only have beginnings and endings. There's like no middle. And when there is a middle, there's like a beginning of a middle and the ending of the middle, but no middle of the middle. Am I making sense here? Probably not. Plots don't feel like they properly play out. They just jump from plot point to plot point. I feel like they're doing the right things, but they're not doing them at the right pace. Again, I know this is because of the episode count being substantially shorter than its parent show. How I Met Your Mother has 24 episodes a season, while How I Met Your Father only has 10, which is less than half of what its predecessor was given. Maybe going into this, there was no guarantee of a season 2, which has now since been guaranteed. I enjoy the How I Met Your Mother shoutouts and callbacks. Seeing the captain return in some capacity was hilariously unexpected. Seeing Sophie enter McLaren's was incredibly unanticipated, as was Carl's appearance, but it was good to see him. But seeing Robin Scherbatsky herself cameo was out of the blue and jaw-dropping. I think it was a good use of the character, and seeing her bond with Sophie over their vaguely similar first outings with someone they loved was very sweet. I think this new series doesn't need the involvement of characters from the past. It survives entirely on its own as its own thing. But in saying that, these characters' inclusions don't come at the expense of the newer cast. As a matter of fact, I'd say these elements' sudden emergence work in favor of the show's new stories. They don't feel like they're incorporated to solely play to the nostalgia of the overall fanbase. It's less a wink and a nod, and more a full-on acknowledging hello. I hope there are more to come in the future, but furthermore, I hope that they're properly used and utilized like they've been here. I want something meaningful. I don't want Barney showing up randomly hitting on chicks somewhere in the background of a shot. Now that I say it out loud, I think that's actually probably the proper way of utilizing Barney, so I take it back. I do actually want that. But only him in this specific role. Everyone else has to have purpose. All in all, I enjoyed seeing the past, present, and the present. I will admit there are some cringy moments here and there where I feel like the writing is very outdated or just outright bad. I do think some of the characters can come across as a bit lacking. There seems to be an over-reliance on modern technology and websites and apps and whatever's current, and it just feels like a desperate bid to be relevant. Like, obviously some of these things were bound to come up given the timeline, but the constant use and emphasis that's put on them makes the show feel a little bit less timeless. I think the first season of the show showed a lot of promise. It certainly wasn't perfect, but then again, what show is in its infancy? It wasn't always good, but when it was really good. And when it was bad, well, it was just kind of boring. I really hope to see the show continue to improve and provide solid content in the future. And you can bet that I'll be watching along to see that it does, or doesn't, but really hoping that it does. And the fact that it seems like these episodes got better as time went along, I think is a very good indication that those who have been given the reins here know what they're doing. If for some reason or another you have yet to watch How I Met Your Father, I highly recommend it. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section below by saying,
Wow, I am a sexy bird.
I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.